It's time for your Lowcountry real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. Thanks for joining me this morning for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show, a show designed to help you become more informed about the real estate market. I provide my expert news and reviews of that market as somebody that's been inside of it. For the past 13 years, I've sold about 1,000 homes here in the Charleston market, and I've been on this program for 6 years. So I like to take local, regional, national data, apply that to us here in Charleston, and then also share some of my experiences with you so that when it comes time for you to buy or sell a home or invest in real estate, or you just have general questions about the market, you know where to turn, you know the right questions to ask, and you know how to prepare for the process. So I've got a lot of fun stuff planned over the course of the next hour, including a very special guest. But let me first say that if you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, you'd like to learn more about working with myself and my team, I can be reached at 843-345-1273. That's my cell. Call or text that number, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Learn more about myself and my team, who we are, what we do, what we sell, how we sell it, all of our incentives. Like if you sell your home and buy another with my team, we'll pay your moving expenses. We offer pre-listing home inspections, free staging, all kinds of great stuff. Listingsincharleston.com is the website to go to for that. Now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce David Slade. David Slade is a senior reporter for the Post and Courier, and you've no doubt read his articles as a personal finance columnist and Metro reporter. Good morning, David.
Morning, Brian. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us. Or good you're here as well. So I want to focus on a few different things over the course of the next few minutes, and I'd like to start with this. What is one of the most controversial or popular, let's say, articles that you've published over the course of the past, say months or maybe even 12 months as it relates to our local economy or our local housing market?
Sure. Some of the most widely read ones that I've written in the past several months have been about how many people are moving to the area, what Mount Pleasant is doing with permit restrictions, and how, as a result, growth seems to be moving north toward Allendale now. Right.
Well, I mean, you bring up something really interesting. And let's start maybe with this, the Building Permit Allocation Program in Mount Pleasant. Because I'm getting a lot of folks that are now contacting us. We are selling on my team more land over the past 12 months than we have sold in probably the past 6 years. And David, I was showing you some stats before the show about just what's happening in the vacant land side of our market and how confusing to a lot of people it can be. And so let's just kind of start a little simple. What's the goal of the Building Permit Allocation Program in Mount Pleasant?
Sure. The goal behind the program is to slow the rate of growth. They're putting a limit on permits every year, and that's going to be in place. It's in place now. It's going to be in place for 5 years. And add it all up, and it's 420 single-family homes a year. That's what they're going to allow. And then there's some more permits for multifamily.
Okay. And so let's say best case scenario. Let's say this works out. How do you think that impacts our market?
Sure. Well, it obviously restricts how quickly people can build. And it's the pace that's really kind of chafed some people in Mount Pleasant, because remember, Mount Pleasant had 30,000 residents in 1990. Now they have about 90,000. It's been very rapid, and they're not all going to the same place. The town's also expanded its size, but the town's focus is this is just coming too fast constantly. We want to slow it down, and here's how we're going to do it.
Right. And so let's say that we plug this hole, right? That water's going to redirect somewhere. So what do you perceive to be some of the challenges that arise out of limiting the number of single-family homes that can be built on an annual basis?
Right. Well, I mean, certainly classic economics tells us, you restrict the supply, then it's going to raise prices. That's great for people who already own property in Mount Pleasant. It's not good for people who want to build there. And the big question is going to be, does the desire to build more houses in Mount Pleasant exceed the amount of permits they're going to allow? Because, in the background, the economy plays a big role, and we could be slowing down, and maybe they won't even get requests for as many permits as they'll allow. That's what happened the last time they did this.
Right. And it's, whenever we have one of these building permit allocation programs, it's kind of a telling sign of the market, isn't it?
It sure was the last time. Mount Pleasant passed their first permit allocation plan at the end of 2000. The recession arrived 3 months later.
Right. I will say, and I don't mind being on air and saying this, that I don't think we're headed toward a recession or a market in which the bubble is about to burst. I do think that people are very confused. First of all, I will say that I think the industry overall is confused about the state of the real estate market, which means that the public is even more confused about the state of the real estate market. Because I'll have people call and they'll say, hey, Brian, how does the Building Permit Allocation Program, as an example, affect the value of my real estate, of my vacant lot? And the truth of the matter is, quite frankly, it doesn't really impact the value of your lot. When buyers are now approaching the process of buying land and building on it, one thing you can do as a seller to differentiate yourself is have all of your ducks in a row. The due diligence period associated with purchasing these properties can be quite lengthy, depending upon everything that needs to be done to determine whether or not you can build what you want to build on that particular lot. So if you have your survey, if you have, even a copy of the ARB guidelines for building a property in that subdivision, it's at least a start. But the more that you can do and the more you can provide and the more you can facilitate a transaction on the behalf of a seller for a buyer, the better positioned you're going to be that person that buyer wants to work with. Because when we're talking about lots in general, unless we're talking about waterfront property or marshfront or a specific, way in which that property is situated in that neighborhood or area, there's not a huge difference between one, what we call an inside lot, just, a regular lot sandwiched between two homes, and the next one down the street. So if you can differentiate yourself and be easier to work with, shorten that time frame for that buyer, the better chance you're going to have of being the person that buyer chooses to go through that lengthy process with you. And I think the other thing, David, that a lot of people aren't really talking about are just the impact fees of Mount Pleasant versus other areas of Charleston. I'm not really asking for specifics here, but do you find that gets kind of swept under the rug?
People have stopped talking about it so much because it was approved 2 years ago and fully phased in June. But the town of Mount Pleasant now has, certainly the highest impact fees on the South Carolina coast. Some of the highest in the state. I think they're maybe comparable up near Fort Mill, where they're dealing with all the growth from Charlotte. But North Charleston has no impact fees. City of Charleston, virtually none. Mount Pleasant, thousands of dollars if you're building a home, or and on the commercial side, if you do something in Mount Pleasant that generates a lot of traffic, there are going to be a lot of fees, even if it's an existing building you're moving into.
Right. Let me switch gears. I want to talk for a minute about just traffic, which, by the way, is relative depending upon where you're from. If you've lived in Charleston for your entire life, then yeah, you're going to think traffic is awful. I have plenty of folks that we work with in the Tri-County area that wouldn't get caught dead driving to Mount Pleasant from West Ashley or other areas of the Tri-County, which is a little bit comical to me. But it is what it is. Everybody has their own opinion of what traffic is. I'm from Northern Virginia, very close to Washington, D.C. That's some traffic. My sister drives 2 hours to and then 2 hours from work every day. And that's the norm for a lot of people. But anyways, when people are considering buying a house, obviously commute time to work is a major factor in deciding which areas and neighborhoods to shop for homes within. So you wrote a great article middle of January 16th, I believe, about the almost $3 billion that the Charleston metro area is going to have to spend on roadway improvements and infrastructure to account for all of this growth. And so give us a little bit of a summary on that article.
Sure, absolutely. And this isn't one of these things where it's an estimate of what we need to spend. These are projects that are already already happening. They're planned to happen just in the next couple of years. And it's everything from reworking the I-26, I-526 interchange to widening Highway 41 in Mount Pleasant, to widening 176 out near Cane Bay, Maybank Highway, Savannah Highway. I mean, if you look at the map, you might have seen it because it was published with the article. Almost all the major roads in our area are due for some sort of widening. And it's all about playing catch up, and all these road projects are going to make things worse before they make them better. And they're just going to be more coming behind that.
Right. And there's just no way getting around the cost or the amount of time or the inconvenience that is going to be caused by fixing this issue retroactively. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. We're going to live in an area with a lot of orange cones for the next several years, but it's necessary. You know, I've got folks that work in my office in Mount Pleasant that commute from West Ashley. It takes them an hour and a half to get to my office, and that's pretty crazy when during non-peak traffic times I can get there in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I want to be in the orange cone business. That's the place to be now. I think what I hear from people, surprisingly little about the cost, which is staggering. I mean, extending I-526 across Johns Island, that's coming in well over $100 million a mile. Highway 41 in Mount Pleasant, more than $30 million a mile. What I hear complaints about is how long it's taking, because going through the permitting process can take, like with Highway 41, years.
Sure.
And then the construction itself might be another, depends on the project, year and a half, 3 years, depends.
Yeah, and I've had folks that live right on the stretch of 41 that have contacted me, and they've said, hey, should I sell now? Should I get out before this whole thing starts? What's the play here? And where can I go to get information on what's going to happen and when it's going to happen? I said, it's not out there yet. I mean, it's in the works, but if you're looking for specifics, they're going to be pretty hard to find. And as somebody that obviously researches everything before publishing articles, is that the case? You think there's just a lot of gaps that still need to be filled about what the plan is moving forward?
Well, it depends on the project, but yeah, like with Highway 41, they haven't even decided what the plan is yet.
Right.
And it's very controversial. They talked about maybe running a 5-lane road through the middle of several subdivisions, and then they dropped that. That was not very popular.
I couldn't imagine so.
But everybody knows that in the background, and for those not familiar, Highway 41's up in northern Mount Pleasant, runs from Highway 17 to the Wando River. Tens of, not tens, but thousands and thousands of homes have been built on both sides of this 2-lane road. And they're talking about widening that. Immediately across the Wando River, they're going to build 9,000 homes at Cainhoy Plantation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all very related.
Yeah. That area of Charleston, it has been amazing to watch that area grow. I've lived here since 2006. 2002 is when I got here. And yeah, that area, you talk to somebody that grew up in Mount Pleasant and they say, wow, Snee Farm was the boonies. And I know we're talking very specifically about certain areas in Mount Pleasant, and those of you that listen to this program are located all over the Tri-County and the state. And for those of you that listen to the podcast, I know this isn't very relevant to you, but David, is there anything that you want to ask me about the market or anything that you have some curiosity about from the real estate side of things?
Sure. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on where the market is going, because I look at some of the statistics and it looks like we have a seller's market right now. We have tight supply, but then you also hear that homes are sitting longer, people are reducing prices, buyers are scared off by interest rates, even though they're still near generational lows. A lot of real mixed signals, a lot of cross currents happening right now, and we're very late in an economic expansion. What's your crystal ball say?
Well, my crystal ball has been getting a little shinier over the years as I've been selling more and more real estate, but I in no way, shape, or form can predict the future. But I can tell you what's happening right now. And the best illustration that I can create for that is if you're in a roller coaster, you're in the car, and you're climbing up that hill to take that first big drop. Let's say that there are 3 cars on that roller coaster ride. This is how I illustrate our market. The first car is staring down, about to fall, and that to me represents the middle to luxury price ranges. Those markets, those areas, those price ranges are, in most cases, flatlined And in some instances, because of the nature of agents, when you have a way more agents than you do, say several years beforehand, you have the propensity to overprice properties. There are plenty of agents out there that will do whatever it takes to get a sign in the yard. So that market needs to become more realistic about the true value of their property. So prices are going to come down a little bit. They're going to autocorrect. So that's the card that's pointing downward. The card that's sitting on the, that's kind of straddling that peak is the middle tier price range. There's not a huge amount of upward or downward pressure on pricing. Demand is still pretty solid. Supply is reasonable. I expect prices to appreciate kind of in line with inflation. Then there is the car that's still climbing. Those properties are still appreciating in value, and that's the $300,000 and below market. There's still a lot of demand for it. I can list those properties and sell them in a month or less all day long. And so that's still a very strong market, but it's very sensitive depending upon your area and your price range. And like Mount Pleasant as an example, $600,000 and above, it's a challenging market. There's a bunch of stuff out there, especially when you start factoring in new construction and all of the incentives that they're offering. I sold a $1.2 million new construction house, and if the buyer used the builder's preferred lender and closing attorney, they gave him a $20,000 discount on the price. If they didn't, they didn't get that. So you've got all these different little hooks or ways of propelling that property forward, selling the property in markets that are shifting. But I think the bottom line here is that we are right in the middle of the shift. The trend is shifting depending upon the area and the price range. The challenge is the data doesn't support it yet because it's happening right now. And if you think about how we price properties or the analytics that we use, if something closes today and it took 3 months to close, then that property 3 months ago was priced based on home values over the past 6 months prior to that. And those closings were priced based on homes 6 months prior to that. So you have these lagging indicators, and people always want to try and time the market. When is the best time for me to list my house, or when should I buy? And that's a very complicated answer. There's no one size fits all approach to that. But I will say that overall, the industry is very confused about the state of the market. And as a result, the public is even more confused about the state of the market. And so you really have to analyze things on a case by case basis based on their motivation to buy or sell, and then the headwinds that contribute to whether it being a buyer's normal market, or seller's market in that particular area and price range. So
makes sense to me. I mean, I think what's really changed is that the Great Recession just terrified people about buying real estate.
Yeah,
I mean, we'd never seen a time before when not in my lifetime when houses could lose a third or half their value.
Yeah. And so you think about this, everybody's focused right now on the fact that December closings were way down. It's this huge hot button topic. But in reality, that is just a reaction to the fact that interest rates spiked at the end of the third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter. And people are like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want to spend an extra 20% a month to own this house. The market's still very sensitive. You're right. Well, David, it's been great having you this morning. I really appreciate it, and I hope we get a chance to do this again. So thank you so much for being on the program. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how to interview a real estate agent for the process of buying or selling or even investing in real estate. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. And thanks again, David, for your time.
Glad to be here.
It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Broadcast Saturday mornings at 9 and Sunday mornings at 10 on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.